This
started with.
conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so today we are going to have our first module started, which is like the general introduction of what identity and access management is all about. We are going to, eventually go into Okta, maybe not today, but like why we are having this discussion is because many of you might not be from the background of, security or IAM domain, and so just to give you an overview or a background of what identity and access management is, it would be good like if you know something and then start learning Okta. So I'll be just sharing my screen. Just let me know once it's visible to you guys. Yeah. Okay, is it visible? Is it visible, guys?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, perfect then. Okay, so if we talk about identity and access management, right? So, like, what is the first thing which comes to your mind? Like, the heading itself suggests like identity and access management. So, what are we trying to do over here? We are trying to understand, we are trying to manage the identities and the access over here. Now, it could be, managing the identities, not just the end users, but it could be your service accounts or your applications or your other things. And same goes for the access as well. It could not just be for the end user, it could be for some service accounts created or for some different identities or the entities which are there on your environment. So, like identity and access management comprises of different modules, and the first one, or we can go it in any order, but like the first module which we can talk about is about the access management. So now, what is access management? Like, it is supporting the authentication mechanisms. We are going to talk about what authentication is, but mainly verification of the identities or the entities which are there in your environment. It could be your end user, it could be your some robo, or the service accounts which are created it, but it's mostly, or it's basically the authentication mechanism, which includes the single sign-on. We are going to talk about this terminology, what single sign-on is. But right now, if I need to tell you what single sign-on is, it is like you log into the to some environment, and then you just need to log in once or sign in once, and then you can access everywhere. Uh, you don't need to put in your credentials every time whenever you log in or sign in. So that's what single sign-on is. So, and multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor, I'm sure you guys must be aware of it. Like, how to do is something you might not be, but what it is something like the second factor authentication. You enter your credentials, and then again you need to prove that you are the right person, even if your credential is even if your password has been compromised, you have something which you possess, which can only be approved or told by you. So that's why the second factor, that is the multi-factor, comes into existence. And federation and password management. So these are all the different services which comes under access management. And what access management is like, it's basically allowing you to help you understand how the access needs to be managed by verifying the identities, and talking about the access stuff, like what kind of access needs to be given to what people. So basically, authentication and authorization are the two different terms which comes under access management. Okay, so and then we have this single sign-on, MFA, federation, and password management. So we are going to look into everything, like what single sign-on is, what multi-factor is. But for the time being, basically it's more of like I managing the access of different identities or the entities. Now, we just mentioned about access management. Next, I'll just talk about identity management. Okay, so like what is identity management? So identity management is somewhat like, the life cycle and the self-service management of your end user accounts. Okay, now what are end user accounts? Like for an example, an employee is joining an organization, so that becomes your identity. Okay, or if you're creating an account in your system, maybe some, some account which is like a service account, that account does not require the intervention of a human. It's just, being created for some, maybe RPA purpose or some for process automation or stuff like that. So now that account has to be, there would be a creation of that account, and that's when that account has taken the birth. And till the time that account is there on your system, right? Like till the time that account has either been deleted or deactivated, like till the account, the existence of that account is there in your system, that account needs to be managed. That be it in a service account or be it your end user account. So for example, if we take an employee joining an organization, so till the time employee is associated with the organization, till the time employee has not left the organization, till that time that account needs to be managed. Okay, so that's what identity management does. Like, maybe giving access to multiple people to multiple things, what to do, how to do is something to be, done through identity management. But from a high level point of view, that's what identity management talks about. We are going to see in detail what it is, but like from a high level point of view, that's what it is. Next we can, mention about access governance. This is basically, the policy based activities enabling the definition enforcement for the IAM, for the reviewing and the auditing of IAM functions and policy compliance. So what does it mean now? So your access needs to be governed. Okay. For example, I have been made as an Okta administrator. Okay. I'm just taking an application. Okay. Don't think about like Okta will be doing something over here. I'm just, talking from a high level point of view about identity and access management. So supposedly you can assume that I have been, made an administrator for Okta or any other application. Now, I have got nothing to do with that application maybe after 6 months. Like I don't need to manage it, I don't need to do it. So should I have the access for that application? Should I still be, owning the access of that application, and that to an administrator one? It could be member one or anything, but still. So there should be some intelligence or, something on your system which determines that, okay, this guy is not involved here now, and the access needs to be revoked or updated. For example, it is not just, talking about revoke only. Even if like, I was a maybe a manager, now I'm becoming a senior manager. Okay, so maybe I need to get access to certain things. Like some people would be coming, I might be, taking parts in some more projects, and for those, access needs to be provided to me. So there should be some intelligence layer in my system which understands all these things, and then, accordingly provide me access what is required. And also there should be like, some review check what is happening, that what kind of access or what level of access I have, and accordingly that should be determined what to do with that access. Okay, so that's basically the governance part, like that intelligence in the system. Okay, next comes the privileged access management. Okay, so privileged access management is like the access management part, but it's just talking about the service accounts. Just a second, guys. So yeah, so it just talks about the service accounts, like the access management for some privileged accounts. Now privileged accounts, as the, the word suggests itself, it's basically telling you about some elevated permission accounts. Okay, I just mentioned about the admin account, or some accounts which are having more privileges, or which are being used for some special purpose in the system. So this is what, privileged accounts are, and we are trying to manage the access for those accounts, and hence the name is privileged access management. Now the last part is data security and analytics. So now whatever access is there, right? So that needs to be identify and like governed, and then there should be some reporting and auditing on that access. So for example, if you guys are already working or if you are not, so there are many things which you might be experiencing while working. Somewhat like, if I just need to give you an example, one of those things is like, you get a check on your system after some time that this kind of an update is coming up, and you need to have it installed on your system. Or maybe like, maybe you are using a particular application and from last 6 months you haven't used that application. So automatically it opens a ticket on your system saying that this application needs to be uninstalled from your system because you are not using it from last 6 months. And if you have to use that application in the future, then you need to give them a reason to the maybe IT team or some team, and they'll just manually check, okay, and they'll just skip it and you can still use it. But like, what I'm trying to convey over here is that there is some kind of a check, right? Like, there is some kind of intelligence or reporting or auditing that is happening, and that is like your data security and analytics. So so for example, there's this little diagram over here. If you just look into it, so there is an end user, which could be your employee, or any resource in the organization, and that end user is managed through identity management system. Okay, so you can just, I think, identity management as a box. So there would be many identities present over there, and now these identities are associated with different services or application. So like, whenever there is a user or an employee who is being onboarded to an organization, the first thing what happens is like your email ID and password, or stuff like that, are created. So somewhere that needs to be created, like somewhere that data is being stored, right? Like, for example, I joined, so it's like abc.com. So somewhere they are storing my data, right? So mostly, these are directories which organizations purchase, and that's where they store the data. So it could be your active directory, it could be your LDAP directory, but from an industry point of view, mostly you'll see that 90-95% of the organizations are going to have the active directory. Okay, so that's why, like, these identities will be present in the active directory, right? These identities will be present in the active directory now, or it could be there in your LDAP directory. Okay, so now the identities, like, who is going to leverage this single sign-on service? It has to be done through the employee or the resource who has joined, right? Like, who are working with the organization. There are multiple applications, like maybe your finance application, maybe your attendance timesheet application, or your Outlook Teams. So you cannot like, every day if you need to log in to 10 applications for your work, so you cannot just go in and log in every time, right? Like, this is my username, this is my password. You can, but like, that's not the best way to do it, right? So there came a way which is to do it through single sign-on. Like, it is not compromising your security, plus it is giving a good user experience as well. The user don't have to log in again and again, and also it's not compromising the security because of the protocols and the manner in which the single sign-on is achieved. So what's happened, like, you have different identities. There is a single sign-on service, and to whichever application you want to access, if you have a session created, you can access those applications. Now this is like a little, everything is theoretical, whatever we have just talked about right now. We are going to see how not everything is going to be implemented in Okta, because like, currently we are talking about identity and access management, and if we need to talk about particular tools, we have different tools supporting each of the headings which we have over here. Like, Okta supports access management, little bit of governance, but very little bit. and IDM also little bit, but mostly access management is something Okta is very superior in. And then we have different tools like for identity management, SailPoint is there. For privileged access management, CyberArk is there. So we have different identity and access management tools which helps us to achieve what we are trying to tell you over here, like whatever we discussed, like how to manage access, what do we mean by access management, what do we mean by IDM management, or the diagram, the little figure which we see over here. So this can be achieved through different IAM tools, and Okta is one of those IAM tools. Okay. So now the next question arises is like, why do we need IAM? So like, is it that difficult to manage? Like whatever we are, whatever we were seeing here in this diagram, is it that difficult to manage that we require tools to, manage these things to, help us achieve these things? So the answer is yes. But now the problem is like, why do we need IAM? Like what IAM helps us to do? It can be done manually also, right? Like someone joins the organization. Okay, you create a record in the Excel, and then you manually go in and give it, like you go to the application, give them the access. Okay, you can go to Teams, you can go to Outlook, your account is created, and then the individuals can log into their accounts with their credentials every time. It's not like when IAM wasn't there, people were not working, right? Like people have been working from last so many years. So IAM actually helped us to like help us to ease that process, like that manual process, and also like that complex, or manually if you are doing something, so there is definitely a chance of having human error, right? So IAM helps us to eliminate all those errors and stuff like that. So if you see like identity and access management, it's a critical part for any enterprise security plan. Okay. And it's basically linked to the security and the productivity of the organization. Because like, for example, if we talk about large or big organizations, right, uh, like Baker Hughes, Deloitte, or some Amazon. So these people are having more than 1 lakh of employees. Now, is it that simple to manage manually? Like, how do we manage 1 lakh records? So we need some system or something, right, like which helps us to manage all these things. So that's what IAM helps us to do. So it helps us to increase your productivity and stuff like that. Also, like there have been many scenarios or many cases in many countries where any user credentials which are being compromised, it actually affects the information assets. Or like what happens is like, for example, you are a end user, and your password has been compromised somehow. Like your pass I came to know about your password. Now that is password is something very confidential, right? No one, like even your best friend or anyone in the family or anyone in your organization, no one should be knowing your password apart from you, right? But somehow that password has been compromised. Now this becomes a threat to the organization for which you are working, because like there's a lot of information, right, like client information or the data which no organization wants to make it public, like, right? Or they don't want that the hacker or the malicious people outside in the world, they should be having those credentials, that password or that information with them. So what happens is, um, like once the credentials are or anything is compromised, it actually like the organization suffers. So in order to eliminate all those threats and risk, IAM helps us to achieve all of that. Like I'm not saying that if IAM is developed or it's into the system, there cannot be any scenario that like it is not possible to breach the system. But like it's more of like that currently you did not have any layer of security. Now you have put like 3 layers of security. So right, so like it's exactly like you are keeping a very simple password like test@123, or you are keeping a very complex password which is very difficult to think. It could be like 1 in 64 lakhs that your password can be thought by someone, the probability of it. Or it could be like 5 2 1 on 5, like 20% probability that you can think. So what it is like 0.0005, is the probability which is good to have, or 20% probability, right? So like the one which is having very difficult, or if you're putting on the layers of security, so then it becomes difficult to breach or enter or penetrate into the system. So that's what IAM helps us to do. And then there are many privileged accesses which we talked about in the previous page. Some accounts are having elevated roles and different permissions, so those accounts needs to be properly managed and handled, because for example, you can take of it like an administrator account. Now there is no end user associated with it. Maybe that end user account has privileges to something, some admin privileges you can think of. And if that account is compromised, which means like the hacker or the malicious people, they will have access to a lot of information which they should not have. like you know Maybe the company's HR information, like who, if you are an HRMS admin and you have details about the employees, their salaries and stuff like that. Now this is very confidential information, right? No one should be knowing, like even in the organizations we don't want like people should be knowing each other's salary, right? What if the hackers they penetrate into the system and they are able to view all this information? So that becomes a threat to the organization. It's complete data security breach, right? So uh, IAM helps us to make sure that we are putting some layers of security, and that too in a streamlined and a automated manner, so that if things don't go well, we have a way to recover out of it. So that's what like cybersecurity is all about. Like it's basically protecting your data, and identity and access management is actually helping us to do the same. Like it's if we if I have to just explain what identity and access management is, so it's like basically giving right level of access to the right people for the right resources, right? So like people should be having only those access for which they are associated with the organization. They should not have like all the access and then it becomes a threat to everyone in the organization. So now the next question is like how IAM works. We just went through what identity and access management is. We just went through why do we need IAM. Now the thing is like how does this the thing work? We are talking about access governance, access management, single sign-on services, somewhat like privileged access management. But how do we incorporate all into our system? So, see, what happened was like some years back when identity and access management domain wasn't there. So, how do people used to manage their data? Like, still people, I mentioned, like still people were working, right? So, they used to comprise some four basic elements. One was the directory, in which that could be your identity repository. I mean, like the data of your employees which are joining the organization. So if I have 5 people joining today, I'll just note down that data somewhere in my in my repository, be it an Excel database or anything. Okay, so it was like an identity repository. Then there were tools to add, modify, delete the data related to the access and stuff. Like maybe if someone has left the organization, then delete it. If someone is joining, then add it. Or some roles are changing. I mean, some like someone is becoming a manager, so then modify it. So this is completely related to the access lifecycle management. So first was your identity repository, then they would be having somewhat like some access lifecycle management, and then a system that regulates the user access. So when like regulates the user accesses, who is providing the user access to the different end users. And then finally an auditing and reporting system, like who manually going and checking, okay, Wipro has access to this. Oh, Wipro doesn't require this access, so why is it? So that's like your reporting and auditing. So all of this thing was done manually before. Now this regulating the user access stuff, right? Uh, for example, I have joined the organization. I need to be given the access to certain application. So this requires a lot of manual intervention if in case we don't have IAM in the system. But so this has traditionally involved a number of authentication methods for verifying the identity of a user, including passwords, digital certificates, tokens, and smart cards. So basically, you if you are working, so you might have, or even if you are not, then also, like, always it's a good practice to change the passwords, right? Like after every 60 days, it is recommended that one should change their passwords. So be it passwords or the smart cards or the tokens, it's always good that that access is being regulated or governed by someone. So that's what like how the IAM came into existence. And like all of this manual intervention, no, that was something which was to be eliminated, because if it is about 5 to 10 or 50 to 100 employees, it can still be managed, okay. But if it is about talking about large organizations, then it becomes a very difficult or a challenging task to manage it. So and and just not to manage it, but also to also to make sure that that you're not compromising with the security anywhere. Because if there is a data security breach or any if there is a threat to your data in the organization, then it becomes a huge issue. Because like a lot of ransomware, you might have heard about ransomware attacks, a lot of amount has to be given by the organization to the hackers who do it, in order to get back their data. So no organization wants to have it, and hence we have the IAM into the organizations. Now, we just talked about identity management on the very first slide, but like I just want to go what identity management is a little bit detailed right now. And then we'll go to, we'll see access management also a little bit in detail. So that, because we have identity and access management, we have different sub modules, but now our focus should, get back into about the IDM part and the access management part. And then eventually, once we are comfortable with access management part, we'll bring into Okta that how is it happening and what are we doing with Okta on regards to access management. Also, there are certain things which Okta does for the IDM side. So we'll look to all those things in the coming sessions. So if you talk about what identity management is, right? So basically it is the organizational process for identifying, authenticating, and authorizing. Now, these are the three words which we need to understand one by one. When we say identifying, so it means like first of all, it needs to be identified. Like you go in, right? Like you go, suppose if you are logging into your Outlook, first what do you do as a first step? You type your email. You don't even type your password, you're just typing your email. And suppose you're typing @abc.com, and there is no account with @abc.com in the Microsoft's Outlook. So then you'll get a pop-up message, right, that you're not part of it, or there is nothing like that, or organization does not exist. So this is because, like, the very first step is to identify if the right person is coming in or not, right? So if the right person is coming in, then the next step is to authenticate that person. That's where your password comes into existence. Like you need to prove yourself that who you are, and you need to put in your credentials if you are authenticated. Now there could be different layers of security under authentication. Like first is your password, then your second factor, that is multi-factor, third factor maybe biometric something. But that's what authentication word means. Like you are verifying your identity as much as the system wants it to be. Like system wants, go in and enter your credentials, you did it. System wants, tell me about your multi-factor, also done. They want third factor authentication also, that also done. Then system says, okay, I mean, we don't have third factor everywhere, mostly it is like your credentials and the multi-factor, but I'm just talking like it's just a layer over which we can have multiple levels. Okay, so we mentioned about identifying, we mentioned about authenticating, and the last is authorizing. So authorizing is like the access on based on the roles. Okay, so now, okay, I got into the organization and I need to have access to application one, that is Outlook or and Teams, and I should not be having access to certain other application until I have been onboarded to a project. Okay, these are like two applications which I should have, and till the time I'm not being onboarded, I should not be, having access. So this is like, access control, I mean authorization part. You are not authorized to work with other application. It does not mean that, you are not the right user, but you don't require that access right now till the time you are onboarded to some project, or some other thing which actually requires you to work with the application. So if you are required to work with the application, then you should have access to it. If you don't require to work with the application and you have many application, why do you need access to it, right? So that's what authorization tells, like, you need to have access based on your role. If you are a fresher, you just need to have access to these five. If you are a middle, I mean some experienced professional, you need to have access to this, like, and based on your projects, and there could be many other criterias and factors, right? So based on your role, you need to be given access to applications, maybe to like networks, and every other thing in the organization. So it is the task of controlling the information about the users on your system. And such information includes information that authenticates the identity. We just talked about what authentication is, and the information that describes the data and actions to which they are authorized to access. Now that authorizes like to what kind of a data they can actually, or to the application they have access to based on their roles. So it includes the management of the descriptive information about the user, and how and by whom that information can be accessed and modified. In addition to users, managed entities typically include hardware and network resources and even applications. So it is basically, talking about entities. It's not, just talking about your end users. It could be your hardware, your network, or an application for which, we need to manage it. Like, so your identity is something like which is unique. So an application could have its own identity, a hardware or a network could have its own identity. So that needs to be managed. Okay, and that's what identity management is all about. So if you just want to have a look, so think of it like, there is an organization, and there is an employee for the organization. uh, Organization gets, like, the employee details are being taken by the HR, and those details are being added to the active directory, right? So whenever you join the organization or start with an organization, your details, you get emails from the HR that we require this. You send them all your documents. All the data is being stored in the active directory. Now this data needs to be, managed properly. Okay, so that's what identity management talks about. So you can just think of it like, these are all the identities. So you correspond to the entities. Now entities is somewhat, it could be your end user, it could be your system, and organization is also an entity. So identities, they correspond to the entities, and they consist of attributes and names. So when we talk about identities, right, so there are multiple attributes, or attributes you can think of like, some like, different criterias or fields which are unique to you. For example, like first name, last name. I mean, not necessary that this has to be unique, but some data which describes you, the schema of you, like, that it's basically telling about, okay, this is who I am. Like, if my first name is this, the last name is this, the phone number is this, location is this, many attributes, like, right? So email ID, SAM account name, like there are many attributes. So all those attributes are being mapped to your identities. There will be many attributes, and every individual should have those attributes, right? It's not like, based on your role or any other thing you will have those attributes. If you're joining an organization, you need to have your first name, last name, email, maybe SAM account name, or any other attribute which is required, right? So all those attributes are mapped to each of the identities. And identities, like these identities are mapped to different like system, organization, and stuff like that. So whole of this needs to be managed in an effective manner. There will be many people for which, you require data to be added, and then according to the data which is added, you require them to, give them different access and manage those identities. So whole of this is like, your identity management. So before we move on to the main concepts of IAM, like I'll just pause off for a moment. If you guys have any doubts till now, I mean it's been totally theoretical, I know, and also like a lot of information maybe. If you guys are hearing it for the first time on IAM, but anything any doubt or anything which you might not have understood, so maybe we can just wait here for 2 minutes and then discuss that. Okay, silence. I'll take it as a no, but guys, I'll request you that please make it an interactive session because, like, in the sessions where we are going to have theory, it might become, a little bit boring for you guys, but it is necessary, and that's why we are having it. Like, we just want to make sure that you guys are well aware of what identity and access management, so that you are able to correlate while you are learning Okta. Because if you don't have any background on IAM, then it would become a little bit difficult for you to understand why are we doing this and how are we doing this. So just make sure that please feel free to like raise your hand and come up and just let me know if you have any doubts. Okay. Okay, so next we are going to talk about some main concepts or terminologies which we have in identity access management. So there is one terminology which is like centralized access management. So this is basically about handling the user authentication and account management at a central system. Okay, so what is it like? Now we just mentioned that accounts needs to be managed, right? Like every individual, the access and stuff like that needs to be managed. Now it has to be done at a central level. We cannot go in and make an automation for every individual. Okay, there is an automation for person A, person B, person C, person D. That cannot be possible, right? There should be some centralized way in which all of these, whosoever is joining that organization, they should be able to, that applies on them as well. It's like centralized AC system. Like you have a centralized AC system for the building. Anyone goes into the building, they are having that AC in their building, or like they can feel it. So it's basically about that only. Now, user provisioning. Now, this is a very important term in identity and access management. This is which we call it provisioning. Okay, so we have different types of provisioning: user provisioning, application provisioning, account provisioning. So basically, in very simple or a layman terms, provisioning is creation of accounts. Okay, so it could be like whenever you hear the word uh, provisioning, it's basically creating the account or adding the account or assigning the account. It could not just be at the account, it could be anything. Like if you're talking about user provisioning, then it has to be account because user is having an account in the system. But if you're talking about like application provisioning or maybe service account provisioning, so that time it is like just creating or managing those accounts or adding those accounts. So that's like a very simple term, although we are going to see how to do what to do, but that's what user provisioning is. Third is single sign-on. Single sign-on is something we did discuss before. It's like you just authenticate or verify yourself once, and then you get access to all the other applications. If in case those applications are part of the single sign-on. If in case like you have an application which is not a part of single sign-on, that application is not never going to be you cannot access it with your credential. If you are like that single sign-on is implemented, then you can do it, right? So that it, but basically it means like you just have to sign in once and you can again all the associated applications you get access to. Okay, a multi-factor is something we discussed, like it is going to be the second factor. It could be a passwords, SMS, fingerprint, push notifications. There are many things on MFA which we are going to discuss. But yeah, I mean like it's basically once you have entered your, like you have verified yourself at layer 1, it's just adding one more layer to the security, making sure that you are the right person who is trying to authenticate. Adaptive authentication is something like for example, now let's consider a situation that currently you went to the office someday, On morning you logged into your system, you did your single sign-on and you did your multi-factor authentication, and now you got into the client network through VPN. I mean, you were doing something and your session got expired. Okay, but there would be some policies written that okay, this person logged in the morning, now in the evening after 2 hours he is trying to log in again. So he doesn't require the MFA to be implemented. He just requires single sign-on if the session is session is not there anymore. He just requires the credentials to be entered. He does not require authentic MFA to be entered. So that's like your adaptive MFA. It's like basically challenging multiple authentication steps based on the user's risk profile and according to the situation of the user. So if the user is trying to authenticate at different levels, so there is like multiple authentications are coming into existence based on the user. If the system feels that this is the malicious user and he's trying to log in again and again with some different names, or with wrong credentials, then at that point of time second factor or third factor might come into pictures. So based on the the nature or the user's risk profile, authentication happens, and that's what the adaptive authentication is. Okay. Next is identity federation. This is trying to authenticating users which are present in an external identity provider. Now, what is identity provider is something which we are going to see later, but like it's basically you are trying to do, so you can just think of it like you have B2C, right? So B2C is business to customer, and you have B2B. So if you are doing single sign on and stuff like that on your own organization, then it's like your then it's not a federation. But if you're doing it with the customer, like maybe you are sitting for you are working for organization one, and you have an organization two for which acts as your identity provider. Identity provider you can think of as an identity repository where all the data is stored. So at that time it's like uh, you are trying to authenticate users which are present in some external directory. That directory is not part of your organization, it's not internal to your organization. So that creates a federation trust between two organizations, and that's what identity federation is. And then we have like reporting, which like we have mentioned before, like it's basically to do with compliance and regulations. Not going to use much, but yeah, I mean it's very necessary for all the auditing and stuff like that. So yeah, so this is like all in all from an high level point of view, some IAM concepts, like which include single sign-on, MFA, adaptive authentication, user provisioning, and whatever else we have. No, like there would be some more terminologies coming later on. We'll just walk you. I mean, I'll just explain those terminologies, but for the time being, you can understand. And I think like everything, like whatever the name suggests, that's what they mean right now. Like how do we do and how do we achieve something, we are going to see it in the later part. But that's what, like if you're talking SSO, so you guys should understand what it means. If you're talking MFA, then you guys should understand what it means. So that's what the purpose is right now. Okay, so before we move on, like let's see how IAM has evolved over the years, and where we stand right now. So maybe 10 years or 15 years back, we had the traditional IAM, which was like everything was on premises, centralized way of doing it, because still we were doing it for the organization, so still a centralized way. We had identity management, authentication, authorization and auditing, and B2E. Now this includes traditional IAM, and now later on there came a second phase where federation came into existence. So there were some features which got included, like the attributes started getting exchanged. There were some identity mappings, single sign-on, and then business to business. Okay. B2E is business to enterprise, and B2B is business to business. Now federation is like I just mentioned before, that federation means like there is a trust between two organizations. Currently, if you are just working on a single organization, that's like implementing IAM on your own or for your own organization only, have nothing to do with organizations outside your, outside your office. But if there is a trust or a federation between two different organizations, that becomes like, adding more features that requires some attribute exchange, right? Like there is an identity in organization two with first name, last name, something, something, and that identity needs to be, authenticated or verified for organization one. So now how do we do that? So we require some attributes, no, some attributes to flow from some second organization to organization one, so that okay, this is your username, this is your password, you are the right person, please log in. So this requires some attribute mapping or exchange. So that's why we got involved in these features. Then came the service of IDaaS, which is identity as a service. This was completely cloud-based service, a SaaS IAM solution, which is software as a service, which includes federation, user provisioning, and this includes the feature of business to customer as well. So this is where Okta lies. Okta lies between 3 and 4, but this is where we are, that is identity as a service. Okta is also identity as a service because it's a cloud-based SaaS solution, and it supports federation and user provisioning and stuff like that. SIAM is like your customer identity access management. Currently, for example, you are doing it for your own, like for your own organization. Now you're doing this identity management for your customer. So, and customer means like there could be many external people who has to work with your organization to do their work. Like there might be vendors, some external people who are required to log into your system because they are part of some project which and they are not your employees, but they are outside people who needs to log into the system to perform certain activities. So that's where this identity access management needs to be managed, and hence we say it as customer identity access management. So this includes a lot of feature like on premise. This is like both way, on premise and cloud. Then AI is there, analytics is there, IoT, Internet of Things are there. So this requires a lot of cybersecurity skills and outside of cybersecurity features as well. And identity APIs is the last one, which is like they currently the landscape where we might end an IAM. Although this is not there for most of the tools right now, because that's what I told, that way here we are right now, which is identity as a service. But this includes like hybrid environments. Hybrid environments could include like your cloud and on-premise working together, like they are being working in a hybrid one. And then there could be multiple cloud solutions coming into existence. Workflows will be there, automations will be there, and then serving to all, business to enterprise, business to business, business to customer. But like this might be a little bit confusing to you guys, but what I'm trying to help you understand is that this is how IAM is evolving, and there's a lot which is coming in the IAM domain in the coming years. Or already there have been many things, if you'll read, which are already part of identity and access management. And this includes everything. You can get your skills upgraded in your IoT, AI, blockchain, everything. Everything is coming into IAM, and a very very good domain to work with. So you just mentioned about what I like identity as a service. So I just mentioned that Okta will be acting as your identity as a service. So if we see then let's talk about what is it, like what is IDaaS. So enterprise, they are embracing cloud. Like there is a boom in the market for the cloud solution right now. Everyone wants to migrate to cloud, but and hence they are moving beyond their traditional network boundaries and the capabilities of their legacy identity and access management solution. Now like what does this mean is like they were actually had some legacy or traditional IAM system, which we just see over here. So they had traditional IAM. Now they are trying to move to the cloud solution from step 1 to step 3 maybe. They currently many organizations are on step 1 or step 2, but they want to move to step 3 and step 4. So that's where they are trying to get out of their network boundary zones and trying to move to the uh, like the cloud solution. So what is it? Like IDaaS is a SaaS-based IAM offering that allows organizations to use single sign-on, which includes single sign-on is having different protocols, which and the most famous protocols are SAML and OIDC. We are going to see later in the coming days what SAML and OIDC is, but yeah. So it helps you to provide single sign-on authentication, access control. Access control is like like who's like we have talked about it, right? Like different types of access and who should be controlling those access and how those access should be controlled to different people. And in order to provide a secure access to the growing number of software and SaaS applications. So an organization, if we talk about organizations, right, so they have huge number of applications, and very difficult to manage if you are not having a solution to it. So people are actually moving to the cloud-based solution so that they can use different IAM offerings, different services in order to manage their applications. But still there are many organizations which cannot completely move from their on-premise. On-premise is like installed or client installed or locally installed on your system. They cannot move from on-premise to the cloud solution, and the reason being is because there is a lot of development of applications which has been done, and now it's not possible that if there are 1000 applications that organizations just migrate everything to cloud. They have started, many organizations have started that process, but it's not possible that every, because this is require a huge development cost and also a lot of time to invest in, right? It might include, like, it might have around 5 to 10 years to actually move everything to cloud. So that's not possible or feasible, right? Like there has to be some solution. So that's why there are hybrid IAM solutions, which is like bridging the gap between the IAM software and the native applications, which are your on-premise applications. So there are vendors like Microsoft and Amazon that provide the cloud-based directories which link with on-premises IAM systems. So you can create a link between IAM and your cloud and the on-premise. So that way you are on cloud as well as on premise as well. So we have IAM solutions wherein we can be available on both on-premise servers and the cloud, and there could be links created between these two solutions, and that's how we can manage it. Okay. Just wanted to show you guys that this is where the IDaaS leader lies right now. So if you see, we have Microsoft, Okta, Centrify, Ping, IBM, SailPoint, Salesforce, VMware, OneLogin, uh, Oracle, SAP. So like these are all different IDaaS services which are there in the market right now. And Microsoft and Okta, they are leading the market for the time being, followed by Ping and Centrify. But like if you see, so Microsoft and Okta are right there at the top because they have a huge and very strong solution to provide on the cloud platform. So I think Rakesh, can we continue or should we continue tomorrow? Like it's 9:30, so I'm not sure if guys will be available.
Hi, Vibhu.
Yeah, hi.
I want to you to elaborate more on attribute exchange.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so attribute exchange, I'll just I'll just try to help you understand in a layman language right now because we don't have anything to show you on the system. But for example, attribute exchange, you can think of it like you have an organization one, you have an organization two. Okay, now suppose you are part of organization one and you need to be authenticated on organization two. Okay, so for example, that you are available in Active Directory. Think of it as a directory where your data is stored, and that Active Directory is integrated with Okta, which is on some other environment. Okay, so maybe like let's try to do it this way. You have like you have org1. Okay, uh, your identity lies here. Okay, and there is org2, and due to some business reasons you need to be authenticated here. Okay, now think of it, how is it possible? Like you are not there in this organizations, you are part of org1 and your identities lies over here. So how will org2 able to authenticate you? Org1 can authenticate you because it has your identity, but how will it do? So what happens is like there is a trust between org1 and org2. Okay, so there is a trust. So this becomes your federation. Like whenever there is a trust, that becomes your federation. Okay, now what happens is like if there is a trust and you need to be authenticated, while this trust is being generated, attributes are being exchanged. Okay, so how they are exchanged is something we'll see, but attributes are being exchanged over here, and that's how. It's not just attributes are exchanged. There are many other things which are exchanged, like your certificate, your metadata details. There are many things which are getting exchanged, but for the time being, attributes are exchanged. Now what happens is like org1 is sending attributes to org2. Okay, to org2. Now when you get into org2 knows that okay, you are virtually having your identity over here now. Okay, virtually I'm saying because you are actually present in org1, but since there was attribute exchange, you are present in org2, and now you will be able to authenticate to org2 as well. So I mean that way you can understand on a layman's language, like not going how exactly to do it, but you can think of it like in this way, that you need to be authenticated to some other organization, so this requires attribute exchange. It's just I'm talking about organization. It's not necessary it has to be organized. It can be within your organization also, based on different scenarios actually. But like currently, like from a high level point of view, you can think of it like there are two organizations, and you need to transfer the data, so that the second organization where you are not there, you get some that organization gets some information, and that is able to authenticate you or verify you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, I think we are above time, guys. So if because like I just don't want to abruptly end the session. So if in case you guys have doubts with today's session, no, so just let me know. And also I would request you, if in case you are getting some time, I'm not saying like maybe an hour or 2 hour, like maybe 15-20 minutes, if you can just read about identity and access management, that will be helpful. It anything whatever you like. I'm not mentioning or specifying some particular topics that you need to go through it. Some I just want you to have that understanding or that passion to learn IAM. If you are interested in IAM, then Okta would be very interesting to you guys. So maybe history of IAM or some other things which you can just Google, and you can just read about what IAM is. Maybe 10 to 15 or 20 minutes maximum, if you can, that will be very helpful for you guys. If in case you're not coming from the IAM background, I'm sorry, like if in case you are already from IAM background and working with some other tool and want to learn Okta, then it's fine. Like, but for the guys who are actually learning IAM or Okta for the very first time and haven't worked any time before on this particular domain, then a little bit knowledge. That's what, like we are not going to have extensive sessions like maybe tomorrow or day after. We'll just complete this and we'll move to Okta. But it will, that doesn't mean that we have convert complete IAM knowledge. It is huge. Although complete IAM knowledge is also not required, but still some knowledge so that you are able to correlate things would be very helpful. So just make sure that if in case you get some time, just go through or read some IAM documents or articles on internet, and that will help you guys. And also now I'm open for questions. If in case you have any doubts on today's session, just let me know. Anyone? Okay, then I'll take that as a no. If in case you have it, just feel free to we can have those doubts discussed tomorrow. Although I know it was very much theoretical today, so you might not have a large number of doubts because you might be still digesting all the information provided. But still, if in case you feel that you read something and you have some doubts, just feel free to discuss it over here in this class. So we can discuss it, and next we'll talk about the authentication and authorization a little bit in detail, and then we are just directly going to jump into the single sign-on protocols, which will start our access management part. So we are going to see what SAML is, what OIDC is. These would be the two protocols which we are going to see in depth, because like secure web authentication is something related to only Okta, and I would suggest that we'll have a practical session to see it before we because there is nothing much to discuss on this protocol, but I'll show you guys practically how we can implement it, and and then we'll just go through and we'll make a developers account for everyone on Okta, and that's where our practical classes will start. Okay. Okay, guys. So, Rakesh, I'm not sure if you're there, but if you're there, I think we are good to close today's call.
Are you going to share those slides?
I'll check with Rakesh and I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Then I think Rakesh is not there, but maybe we can drop off for the day. We'll connect tomorrow again.
All right, thank you.
Okay, then. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time. Bye bye. Have a good one. Take care.
Okay.